Hey, what's up, guys? This is Jermaine. Welcome to the 91 Box channel. And we're going to finish this conversation of the podcast, The Diary of a CEO, where we have Alex O'Connor, an atheist, Greg Kokel, who's a Christian, and Dr. K, a spiritual thinker. They're talking about a lot of different things, but at the 42-minute and 51-second mark, they're talking about what is the meaning and why. Let me see. What is the meaning and why do people feel the lack of it? This is that discussion that they're having at this 42-minute and 51-second mark. And I've heard a lot of things, listened to the whole podcast, but I want to hone in on this. And Alex O'Connor, he starts off talking about this, but I want to give Greg Kokel a chance to give an answer to the meaning of life, of what humanity really needs. So let's go into this.
Of ideas that works on the genetic level in evolution. They call it memetics, when it's ideas rather than genes. The society which just ends up developing this idea that actually, I can't quite explain why, but I just have this drive towards building a society and engaging in legal justice and moral systems and kind of, they're just more likely to survive. So we end up with this sense, this drive within us that we can't explain, and yet we have. So imagine for the majority of our evolutionary history what it was like. Every single day you woke up and you did not know if you were going to have a roof over your head. You didn't know if you were going to have food to eat. You had to go out and you had to hunt it. You had to go and find it. Every single day, the game reset. And so I would imagine that those lives were probably quite meaningful, at least in the sense that I don't think there will have been many existential crises on a day-to-day, because the purpose was quite clear. And like Pascal's gambler, they had a task that they think will fulfill them when they get it, and they don't know whether it's going to be fulfilled. So what's happened today? Well, now we've been given the money without the game. We've got houses, we've got food, we can go next door and get some water, get some food from all over the planet, you know. Like that's it. That you've got the money without the game. So what?
You know, Alex O'Connor, he is right in that assessment. I think about this a lot, of our current modern society and how we used to exist hundreds, thousands of years ago, where there was no supermarkets. There were no car dealerships. Those things didn't exist. There was no hospitals. You had your local communal tribe, and there was a system that you had to go out and hunt. You had to go out and farm. You had to go and make your own clothing. And these things gave us purpose and kept us on task. But now we fast track that. And by the way, I appreciate some of the old things in the past, but I like the modern times because there is convenience, but we have lost something because of convenience. So let's continue.
What do people do in the modern situation when they find that their life is a bit meaningless? They start intentionally doing things which are difficult. They start doing ice baths. They start exercising. They start going into a room just to physically exert themselves in order to sort of build muscle and whatnot, like on purpose, for its own sake. Why? Because today we've got the money without the game. So people are going out and seeking the game without the money. They're going and doing the ice baths and the gym. Whereas the truly meaningful life is one in which you are playing the game in the service of getting the goal. That is why I think that, you know, literally just seeking out those things, I think that there's a reason why they have a psychological impact. It's not as...
He says, we've gotten the money without the game. Now, he's partially right. Yes, we've gotten the money without the game. Is that, and maybe the money he's using that, I'm assuming, as an analogy, but money isn't everything. Like that's, it, yes, we need money. Let's just say that. We need money to pay our bills, put a roof over our head. We need money. But that's not the only thing. Because some people say, oh, when I get the money, it'll make me happy. But once they have the money, then what? It's there's something more to life than just money. He probably could have used a different word besides money, but hey, let's hear what else he has to say.
Simple as just like, oh, well, if you go to the gym, it releases endorphins and makes you feel good. It's like, let's think a bit deeper than that. What's actually going on? People are seeking out the game without the money. Crucially, I've talked about this as a death-denying pursuit, right? The idea that the things that you engage in here, at least in terms of grand projects like religion and society, are, even if just subconsciously, an exercise in the denial of death. Mm-hmm. What would that mean? It means that if you encounter other communities, if you encounter other traditions who just by their mere existence threatens the truth of your claims, those traditions subconsciously represent death. They represent nihilism. So what happens in a society that develops the kind of telecommunication technology whereby every single day you open your phone and you are addicted to a process of scrolling through every 7 seconds a new person with new ideas, with different beliefs from all over the world? Do you think that might have something to do with the meaning crisis that we find ourselves in? We're told that what's happened is that people stop believing in God and now they're all depressed and upset and nihilistic.
Yes, Alex. Yes, that actually is the answer. Yes. But I will say this is more so a first world problem. If you live in a second or third world country, especially a third world country, all the modern ills of the world, they're not really dealing with this. But let's continue.
It's far too simple. You don't think it might have something to do with the fundamentally revolutionary change to our society that has been brought about specifically by telecommunication, by the ability to oftentimes unintentionally and non-consensually be confronted with traditions and people from halfway across the world that just remind you every single day, zing, 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 every single day, that your truth is not the only truth, that the transcendence that you've placed your trust in is completely subjective and personal, and that someone over there believes something totally different and seems to be living just the same kind of happy life. That, I think, is why people are struggling so much. Yeah. It's not just because they're atheists. No.
Yeah, I have a lot to say about this. I'll try to keep it compact. By the way, we are aware of all kinds of different options for us spiritually.
Yes.
That doesn't necessarily suggest that none of the options are actually accurate.
I agree.
That are. Okay, so
I'm making a
there seems to be an
psychological
implication there, and this is what creates kind of the angst, because all we have is our own personal subjective point of view.
I think that's why people experience that. Now, of course, as a matter of truth, you could say, for example, yourself, you could say, yes, I'm constantly confronted by different religious traditions, but I believe that Christianity is true. I think it has the best evidence and whatnot.
This is even true even in the scientific realm. You're all kinds of different ideas, but no one wants to say, just because there are so many different ideas to explain things, that nobody can be correct.
Which is why what I'm saying is insensitive to the truth or falsity of any of the traditions. What I'm saying is...
Okay, that's good, because I want to go to that next.
As an explanation as for the psychological phenomenon, the literal feeling that people have. Because likewise, you would say that there is a meaning crisis, maybe. You would say that lots of people, the statistics we just heard, you would say lots of people, don't feel meaning in their life. And you'd want to offer an explanation for why that's the case. You think their lives are meaningful, right? You think that all of those people who say, my life has no meaning, they're wrong. Their lives actually do have meaning.
Here's the thing. Alex points out their feeling, how they feel. He's talking about he's addressing the psychological phenomenon, but they're feeling. Well, that's the thing. If it's your feeling, if you're feeling like you're lost, or you're feeling like your worldview has no purpose, it's just your feeling. Okay, let's do a thought experiment. Let's say I feel like punching the wall, which inadvertently which would directly break my hand. Should I act on that feeling? Yes or no? Now you guys might say, depending on the context, if let's say I lost a loved one, I'm really pissed off. You would probably understand me punching the wall, but still, should I punch the wall? Because it's going to break my hand. This is how I feel in the moment. Should we follow our feelings? Should we follow all of our feelings? How about that? every single feeling you get. Should you follow that? I think Alex O'Connor's example, like, is missing another component. But let's continue.
Is that what you think?
Well, this was the subjective response. They feel like they don't have meaning, but they were made for a purpose. If they're not in touch with that meaning and purpose, then they're going to feel bereft and adrift.
So you believe there really is a purpose for their life, but subjectively they haven't either found it or they don't feel it.
Yeah.
What I'm doing is I'm offering a psychological explanation for why they don't feel it, which is completely insensitive to whether or not there's a truth of the matter.
I'm so glad you put it that way. Because this is exactly my point, and I don't want anybody to miss it. We're really offering two different pictures of reality here, okay? People have to ask themselves two questions, I think. One is they reflect on their own personal awareness of the need for meaning and significance. Does it seem to them that this is just a psychological thing that people can satisfy in all kinds of different ways depending on the individual? Or does it seem to them, I'm asking these questions because I suspect there is a truth about life that might be discovered, okay? That's the first question. And I think most people's awareness of this is that there's something transcendent, something bigger than them, okay? And
you get that? He pointed out the first part is leaving the subjective personal experience that you're having psychologically and looking outward to something more transcendent, something above you, not just based on you personally or another person, but something outside of you, which as a follower of Jesus, we call that God. We call that God the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Because if your life experience is only subjective, then what's happening to you is just your opinion. What's happening to you is, if someone punched me in the face, that's just like my psychological experience. Maybe it happened, maybe it didn't. But there's an objective reality. Someone came up and punched you in the face, and something has to be done. That wasn't your subjective psychological experience. You just didn't think that up in your head.
And any kind of naturalistic explanation is not going to ultimately satisfy that. The other thing is there any reason to believe that there is a transcendent reality, that God exists, that souls exist, that there is an objective morality that guides our life, and if we're living virtuously, that's going to be satisfying even if we don't believe in God or not. Those are the two things at stake here. And now this description, the story of reality I just described that I hold to, it seems to me completely coherent. Maybe not true, but it certainly is coherent that if there is a God who made us for himself and places eternity in our hearts, that we're going to yearn for that and made the way for us to live, and then we're going to find good ways to live as opposed to unsatisfying ways to live. That makes sense. It doesn't make any sense to me at all to say that my molecules are moving in a certain way to create in my conscious mind, which Darwinism cannot offer an explanation for. It hasn't. That's why Daniel Dennett said consciousness is an illusion, because he couldn't do anything with it. Thomas Nagel wrote his book, Mind and the Cosmos. You're familiar with this, I'm sure. Why the neo-Darwinian materialistic view of the world is almost certainly false. And he's an atheist, for goodness sake, because he can't explain consciousness, not in a Darwinian way. So how is it that this mystery of consciousness, which contains propositional thoughts, ideas, and purposes, if consciousness can't be explained that Darwinian way, how can some characterization of molecules in motion accomplish that same end? That's my concern. This is why I'm not convinced at all about the naturalist one. Yeah. And this one seems so much more plausible.
What you're right.
Okay. I stopped it a little early. But so we have Greg Koukl, who's a Christian, who's a follower of Jesus Christ, give the answer. He juxtaposed two different positions: a more subjective psychological experience, which he goes through the line that even atheists account for the fact that their consciousness can't explain reality. Because if it's merely subjective, if it's merely only in your head, you probably think this is just the Matrix, and I have no way of telling objectively is there a bigger meaning to life than outside of my own feelings or my own psychological experience. Your mind isn't enough to tell you if there's a ultimate purpose or meaning. So then Greg Koukl gives the other option as there is an objective reality, but it's with this transcendent direction. And that transcendent direction, that transcendent part of it is the creator, is the progenitor, which we would call God the Father, God the Son, who is Jesus Christ incarnate, and God the Holy Spirit. They are all Yahweh. They have to reveal themselves to us so that we know we're not in the matrix. There's something that started all this who is objective, meaning if the Bible is true and this God exists, he is the fact of reality. Hey, I'm uncreated, I'm eternal, I'm infinite. I am the objectivity. I am the transcendentness. I created this world. And he has to meet us and tell us this through many different ways. Two ways, really, where Jesus Christ came down on earth and told the people himself. And then the second way, the most common way for us, is that he gave us the Bible, his inspired word. So this is how we know we're not just having a psychological experience, that there is a God that started all this, that God is the starting point. Now, you guys might think, well, Jermaine, I have to see it for myself. Yes, we're all going to see it for ourselves. You know, let me say this before I say that. One of the evidence we do have for Christianity that is objectively true or historically true, I'll use that instead. You can do research and find out about the resurrection, that there was a person who claimed to be God and they were put into a tomb, and then 3 days later they rose again and came out of that tomb, and he's no longer there. If the resurrection didn't happen in history, then there would be no Christianity. So that objectively happened. This was written down. This wasn't people's psychological experience. Do the research. If you're truly seeking, do the research. I implore you. But someone will say, man, I have to see it for myself, Jermaine. Well, if the Bible is true, if Christianity is true, then yes, we're all going to see it for ourselves because we're all going to die one day. You know, you might tell me, hey, Jermaine, I'm not 100% sure on Christianity. I'm like, okay, fine. You're not 100% sure on Christianity. But I can guarantee you, I can tell you with 100% certainty that we're all going to die one day. I don't know when, I don't know how, but that's 100% guaranteed, because you want to know why? Objectively, it's that you've seen death, and death happens. It's a reality. So the question is, what is going to happen after you die? And do you really want to find out before it's your time? Because you don't know when that's going to happen. I don't know when that's going to happen. This is why, as Christians, we evangelize and tell people about Jesus Christ, because if he's true, then he died for you, and he's made a pathway for you to escape his wrath and eternal punishment. He wants to give you eternal mercy, eternal grace, eternal love. So that's the answer. Greg Koukl, he puts it out. It's a transcendent way, but you gotta answer that question for yourself before it's too late. So those are my thoughts on this video. You guys can go watch the full podcast episode. It's over 3 hours. The link to the video will be in the description box below. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. Like this video, subscribe to the YouTube channel, and guys, I'll see you next time.